Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Comfortably Uncomfortable with Coach Hemant, the panel discussion on the future of work. Why did we even start this panel discussion? For a very simple reason. We live in, as we call it, the VUCA world. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and absolutely, no, that's not the word. The word is ambiguous. So absolutely ambiguous. Put all that together and add a pinch of COVID. We saw what COVID did to all of us, to industries, to the way the world operates. And then you add a nice tadka of artificial intelligence. All the plethora of AI tools which have come up in year 2023. Of course, AI is not new. It's been around for decades. It's just that there was a democratization of AI this year when AI access was given in the hands of anybody and everybody who had an internet connection, right? So now, when you create this volatile mix, you have a future which has suddenly become very, very unpredictable. And that's where we thought, let's start a conversation around what the future of work will look like. Today, you are all present in the 11th episode of this series. In the past 10 episodes, we have discussed a range of topics, right from remote working, impact of AI on business, people, and employees, the changing landscape of diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, and so on and so forth. So we have covered this wide range. We even discussed what does leadership look like in the future. And now we take that conversation one step higher, even beyond leadership. The chief officers in the organizations, the CXO band, the CEO, the COO, the CDO, the chief digital officer. Then we have got the CTO, which is the chief technology officer, chief information officer. We even have chief happiness officers now. So we have got a full range of all 26 alphabets being employed. In fact, the generic term CXO, where the X stands for everything, is now specific in terms of the chief experience officer. So yes, that's the level we are taking the conversation to. The CXOs, the absolute top of the organization. What does the CXO of the future look like, feel like, and be like? Who becomes or who gets to become the CXO of the future? The CXOs of today, we have got three CEOs on our panel today. How do they see the role of the CEO transforming? That individual who's going to become the CEO, that individual qualities, the requirements of the role transforming, that's going to be the focus of the conversation today. In the panel today, we have got three fantastic, ambitious, amazing CEOs. I'll go in the alphabetical order. We had a good, diverse panel, but we had some dropouts. So I end up with three women, powerful women CEOs on the panel. We have got Priya, we have got Roonam, and we have got Radhika. Let me begin with Priya first. Priya, let me spotlight you, and I'm going to introduce you to the audience here. So Priya M. Nair is the founder and CEO of Zwag AI Solutions. They offer bespoke AI solutions powered by their proprietary LLM, that's the large language model, ZLang 66B. It would be interesting to know from her what the 66B stands for. Can get technical. So it's the first general purpose foundational model, right? First general purpose foundational model developed by a GCC company, a Gulf company. They cater to businesses with unique use cases guided by ethical use of AI. One of the primary conversations around AI in the recent few months has been that yes, AI can do a lot of things, but let's talk of practical applications. Let's talk of practical use cases. And that's where the conversation is now heading to. So yeah, she brings in 18 years of corporate experience working across IT, business strategy, e-commerce, has an MBA from University of Wolverhampton, UK. Her first book, Formula G, How to Scale Your Startup to a Growth Machine, published in 2021, was an Amazon bestseller in its category, and she has been on prominent panels alongside industry experts from Google, Microsoft, Deva in Dubai, and even Accenture. She has been recognized among the top 10 women leaders in Abu Dhabi back last year and top women in technology in UAE in this very year 2023. So thank you, Priya, for being on the panel today. Thank you for being here. And next, let me introduce, where is Radhika on my screen? Okay. How does that happen? Yes, found you. Okay. Spotlighting Radhika. Welcome, Radhika, to the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, Radhika. Radhika has been a banker. She quit her plus job as a director of commercial banking in Standard Chartered Bank back in 2018. And this was after 18 years of being a corporate banker. She did that to pursue her passion for people, science, and purpose. Now, that sounds very interesting. And this was to make a difference and empower professionals on their leadership journey. Since then, she has coached over 150 mid to senior level professionals and helped them design their C suite journey. Through the CXO incubator ecosystem initiatives, she has impacted over 5,000 professionals and has clocked more than 10,000 hours of executive coaching. She has been awarded the LinkedIn Top Voice for her excellence as a career coach and has 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. Some of our coaches are now CEOs, CROs, entrepreneurs, and many others are now either CXO -1 level or heads of departments in their organizations, soon to be in the CXO levels. We got a right person to talk about the future CXOs. Her mission is to empower not 10,000, not 20,000, but 100,000 professionals in their journey as leaders in their own space in the country and help them lead a fulfilling and a very inspiring life. That, my dear friends, is our master coach, Radhika Balakrishnan. Thank you, Radhika, for being on the panel today. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you here. Last but not the least, we have got yet another CEO, and let me bring her on spotlight. Roonam. Welcome, Roonam, to the show. Roonam is in an interesting space today, even while being here today with us. She had a power cut. So, yes, she will be, you will see her in different phases as we go through the show as the power comes back. Well, Roonam is a dynamic professional with over 15 years of experience in the Indian healthcare industry. So, you see, we started off with AI as an industry, and we came to banking and executive coaching, now healthcare, a full mix of our panelists. She has spent over 7 years at Kochia Medical, India's largest out-of-hospital healthcare company, before assuming her role as the CEO of HealthQ. A trained physiotherapist, Roonam's entrepreneurial journey began in her 20s with her first successful venture, Work Ergonomics, which aimed to raise awareness about postural problems and repetitive stress injuries in the working population. So common with most of us who are working at desk jobs, constantly staring at the laptop, hardly moving from our chairs. So yes, a very relevant industry. In the contemporary world where innovation, equity, and inclusion take center stage, Poonam Mehta, the CEO of HealthQ, shines as a trailblazer. Her unwavering commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion in the workplace embodies the spirit of progress and empowerment. She firmly believes that boundless possibilities that arise when women support one another. Well, as luck would have it, we have got 3 women on the panel today. Roonam envisions a future where a higher representation of women in the healthcare system drives transformative solutions. Her dedication to inspiring innovation, equity, and inclusion extends not only within her organization, HealthQ, but also across the broader healthcare landscape, serving as a true inspiration for all. And that is going to be part of the conversation today also, because diversity, inclusivity is going to be a very important factor, a very important cornerstone of leadership and CXOs in the future. Well, so that's our panel. Great. So we are now straight away going to dive into the conversation. And before I start my barrage of questions, where we get the insights from our CEOs, a quick note for the attendees. Thank you for joining us. And a quick note, you will not be able to unmute yourself during the panel discussion. I encourage you to share your thoughts, your comments in the chat. If you have a question, don't hold it back, put it in the chat. We will be taking all the questions at the end in a specific Q&A round. And it would be absolutely great to have everybody come on video. Just like that, you would like to see us when we are talking. At least we would like to see some of you when we are having a conversation. There's a good connection when we can see you. Okay, great. So let's dive into the conversation about the CEOs and the CXOs of the future. And the crux is that things are changing. They are changing rapidly. And in this rapid changes, what are the new challenges that a CXO would be facing? Right. So let me start with Roonam. Roonam, if we can have your thoughts on what are the new challenges that the CXOs of the current CXOs are facing, and what the new CXOs of the future will be facing, something which the CXOs of the past may not have faced. Over to you. You're not able to unmute. Okay, my bad. Hold on. Sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. I think that's a very interesting question, and I guess that's really why we're all here. Uh, what are going to be the challenges that face the CXO of tomorrow? Let me start with talking about some of the challenges that are facing us today that we may or may not really have been prepared for in our career so far. And one of those things, like you said correctly just before, is that the landscape is changing very, very quickly. Not just with the advent of AI, though that is a huge game changer, and I'm sure Priya will talk about it, but also with the fact that so many people are, have access to internet, have access to urbanization. Um, the world has become a global place, and very correctly so. Let me give you an example of the regulatory landscape, very relevant to our industry and many others. Since the world has become a global space, Indian regulatory systems are finally trying to catch up. Now, innovation moves at a much faster pace. And while the regulatory folks are trying to catch up with innovation, there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and CXOs have really got to be on their feet to one keep pace with what's happening, but also to anticipate what the concerns are that the government is discussing. What are the concerns that could come under regulation tomorrow that don't exist today, and to plan for it. To name a few, right? There is this conversation about how the countries that we share land borders with, the government wants to discourage imports from those nations. And now the fact is that a lot of our components do come from China, Taiwan, etc. So as an industry, a lot of us have to think about how we're going to source and what is going to be the implication. Now, the ideal situation would be if Indian manufacturers were to fill up that gap, but there's going to be a whole space of time between the regulation coming in and someone from the Indian landscape filling in those gaps. And what are you going to do during that period, right? Another example would be a regulation that came. I don't know if people were looking at it. It's very relevant to us as consumers as well. There was a regulation that had come in for the pharma industry, where they said that pharmacos will no longer be allowed to influence doctors in any manner to sell their drugs. Now, this is an extremely important regulation, and I completely back the intent behind it, right? You want doctors to make unbiased decisions when prescribing medicines. But the way the regulation came in would have really put a lot of power in downstream, in the hands of chemists who are, firstly, of course, not qualified to prescribe, but also more easily influenced commercially. So, of course, the regulation was rolled back within a day itself, but I'm sure it was a sleepless night for a lot of execs in pharma companies.
Wow.
I'll stop there for comments.
Wow. Two examples where regulation kind of changes the entire landscape in which an organization is operating. And as you rightly said, the CXO would have to be not only just clued into what's happening on the ground, but also be a participant in the process with the government, with other industry. I mean, these are the places where you have to work with the competitor to influence the government to go in the right way. So, a very interesting thing. And I think uh, while these challenges have always existed, going forward with the pace of change and the way the changes are happening, whether it is healthcare or any other industry, there will be more of a role of the CEO to play in outside the organization as well as within the organization. So fantastic, Runam. I go over to Priya. Priya, you are absolutely in the industry, which is AI, the talk of the town. And that's one which is rapidly changing way faster than anyone can even comprehend, leave alone catching up. So, how do you see that role and the challenges of the CEO transforming?
A lot actually. You rightly said, Hemant, we are the thick of things, especially as a developer, as an owner of a proprietary large language model, and being the first ones to do it in the GCC. Currently, our responsibility, not just as my responsibility, not just as a CEO, but kind of trying to set the precedents in the AI industry in this region. It's a big responsibility, right? And then yes, add on to that, being a woman in AI, being a woman in tech in this part of the world adds on to that challenge as well. So one, how do you make yourself heard? How do you make yourself represent a section of the demography in front of not just your customers, but it also in front of people that really matter, the decision makers, and put yourself out there. That is a big challenge that from a personal level as a CEO that I'm facing. And I'm sure this has been a discussion for decades before me as well, or the challenges that female CEOs are facing in any industry. And now look at it as, at least in the future, we are thinking that a CEO, a female CEO, will not sit here and say the same thing after 5 to 10 years. So that's one of the major challenges in the AI industry, of course, from a personal CEO point of view. But you're absolutely right. When you're trying to make the impact in the AI industry, be a torchbearer, and you have to be a visionary in ways that we have not been before. So in our case, in Zwag's case, what we have been doing is that we know that this is an industry that's not regulated at all, right? There are regulations in silos. In that case, what do we do? A lot of self-regulation has to happen, and we are trying to be a step ahead than others, right? By creating an ESG framework, by self-regulating, by putting ethical and responsible AI at the forefront. So that kind of, nobody is talking about ESG. There is no rule, or there's no kind of guidance on what frameworks, regulatory frameworks, or ESG frameworks, or governance framework that an AI company in this region should have. So looking at, even when that is not there, you have got to have the vision, also the responsibility to take it on yourself, to be to do it for you, and not just for you, not just for your company, but also for the industry as a whole. I think decisions like these will fall on the CXOs more, because I was listening to His Excellency the Minister of AI and remote work at the Dubai Assembly for Generative AI yesterday. And he was saying that earlier the success formula was, E plus whatever, and then there is disruption. That is electricity to whatever. That is, plug electricity to a carpet, it becomes a treadmill. Plug electricity to your hand fan, it becomes your ceiling fan, so on and so forth. And now that success formula, he was saying, is going to be a bit different, wherein you plug in AI, and then the ability to create, using generative AI to come up with molecules, with cures for medicine, to come up with disruptive innovations, the way your brain works, the brainstorming and everything, right? So it's going to be exponential. The innovation, we hope, is going to be exponential. So how do we kind of use that and leverage that technology to be able to deliver what people are expecting, and so on and so forth? So these kind of decision making processes will be completely changed, and the CEOs will have to be really clued in to the possibilities and of course the challenges that come up with that.
Lovely. I think regulatory things again came into the conversation, and they are something which is going to be very important for the CXO levels, because it's a huge responsibility. Also because one default on a regulatory thing and your business could come to a standstill. I think the other thing which you mentioned very important was being forward-looking and taking steps which no other player is doing. Being at the forefront of doing things, assuming your own responsibility. I think it's a very good strategy, simply because at some point in time, those regulation will meet those requirements, and when it comes, you are already there. You are ready. While others would be coping up, others will be catching up, you are already there, market ready, without a hitch. So just being responsible, either environmentally or ethically, can be a business strategy in itself for the CXO of the future. Well, with that, I go to Radhika. Radhika, let me bring you on spotlight. You are literally working with people in their journey towards the CXO position, as well as interacting also with many CXOs through your executive coaching. So what is, let me put this question in two ways. What is keeping those CXOs awake at night these days? What is those new things which are troubling them? And at the same time, the ones who are on their path to become CXOs, what should they be focusing on? Over to you.
So, yeah, thank you, Hemant, for having me over here. Interesting questions, and most importantly, and thank you, and I'm quite impressed with a lot of new things which I learned from Priya and Ronam as well. So one of the few things which I have noticed, see, the role of a CXO is very different from what the role of even a mid-manager or a senior manager or a senior professional is. Suddenly, from being at the base of the mountain, you go to the top of the mountain, and the entire view changes from there. The constant need to keep pulling yourself out and taking a vision view becomes a very challenging task, because it's very normal to get caught in the everyday routine, and sometimes you do lose the entire bigger perspective. So it's not something which happens all day, but it's something which one has to keep remembering and reminding themselves as to why they are doing what they are doing. That part is the most important aspect, because that kind of becomes an anchor for them to align and come back to questioning, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So as you asked, what keeps people awake? Of course, people can be awake for different reasons. Now, a few things. The most interesting part of where we are today is the aspect of uncertainty, the aspect of very quick changes. Of course, AI is a contributor to that, and adapting to these changes becomes challenging, because the point is, if you have to just take a demography, there are 2-3 sets of people. One, a set of people who have been in the industry for 20 years, who have seen right from Y2K till today and have grown through the whole space, where slowly, steadily they have been introduced to different aspects and have reached a stage, seen multiple cycles of economic ups and downs, and have reached where they have reached, have a certain perspective to approaching the future. And there is a whole new generation who have directly been put into that platform. We have not seen really, probably most of us have seen phones in our days, including the ring phones, from then to the digital phones, then to hands free, and today a whole lot of generation don't even know such things existed. It's a museum piece for them. So we are dealing with two different sets of mindsets of people, groups of people, and that is interesting, challenging, as well as very, very. So I deal with both sets of people, and so I see that whole difference in the approach and the attitude. One is like slow and steady, one like no, all go out and let's do it. So that's kind of a challenge which people do face, because in organizations you will have a mix of both in their space. Having said that, the more relevant question could be, how do we deal with this change? What can aspiring CEOs go and get out in this world? So few things. Most important thing is, what is it that I can do? People get caught into a rhythm where people feel that this is only I can do and nobody else can do. And when you get caught in that space, it's very difficult to then cut that pattern, because important thing is, when you want to grow to the next level, ask yourself, am I going to be a high resource candidate or am I going to be a low resource candidate? If I need to be the high resource person, then I need to start doing the high resource level job or outcome or output. Staying here and just wishing for it doesn't help. Start making an action to move to the next level, start delivering at the next level, and then see how the wheel of CXO starts moving for you. So that's a little bit from my side. Over to you, Hemant.
Thank you. Thank you. No, rightly said. I mean, I have also seen this happen where people rise to a certain level and then get stuck. In fact, that reminds me that way back in time when I joined the consulting world, and this was year 2003 or 2005, so almost 18 years ago. And my manager was the one from whom I learned a lot of things about consulting. And he said one of the things which took me a few years to understand. And he had said, people rise to the highest level of their incompetence. And for the life of me, for a few years, I could not understand. And then when I saw it happen, and I realized that, oh, people keep rising based on their performance, and they reach a point beyond which they are either not tapping into their capability or they just don't have the capability. And that's where they get stuck. They've reached their level of incompetence. And there is the other classic. I mean, for those who might have known a bit of Ramayana, you have a character called Jamvan who reminds Hanuman of his true powers, and he's able to tap into his potential only after being reminded. So a coach, a mentor plays a role into such a person's career and kind of kickstarts it all over again. So it's extremely important that you realize that, one, you're not irreplaceable. Two, you should be replaceable. You should be constantly moving and assessing. And as you rightly said, the high level resource versus low level resource, where do you want to be? Absolutely fantastic. While we were talking about this, and we've talked about changes happening right from the dial phone to the mobile phone, and of course now we are heading to wearables and soon embedded phones, maybe a little into the future. So Priya, my next question is for you. Let me spotlight you. The question is basically, you are in the industry which is rapidly changing. So here I want to tap into your personal experience, that your experience with developing and taking Zwag to the market as an AI solutions provider, as a LLM.
Yeah.
What has been your biggest challenge as a CEO, as a founder? And because that will give also our listeners a flavor of what are the kind of challenges which are going to be there for one, new age startups? Also, similar challenges will also be coming to the traditional organizations because they will be embracing technology. They will be bringing in new ways of doing business, new ways of approaching their customers and clients. So over to you from your experience.
Yeah, so I started building Zwag towards the end of 2021, and that was a time when AI isn't or wasn't the way it is now, right? And I didn't go in to create an AI solution. My intention was not to create a company, an AI company. I went in and picked a demography, which was the Gen Zers, right? So that was our target market initially, and you could have now you can kind of relate to how the name came up. Zwag. It's swag with the Z. That's the Gen Z as our target audience, and that's how Zwag came into being. And our use case was at a point where nobody was talking about it. Our tagline was, "Don't just Google it, Zwag it." So it's very clear the kind of target market that we had, the kind of product that we were looking at. The attention span of the Gen Zers, the target market is like 8 seconds. So how are they making decisions? How are they finding the information that they want? And this was the question that we were trying to address. When you Google search for something in the traditional manner, you get a set of sponsored links, and then you've got to go through a lot of links. There was no concept of paraphrasing, right? And whatever chatbots existed, they existed in their ecosystems to answer questions, FAQs, and then customer tickets, and so on and so forth. But taking that concept into a global search kind of a thing, that is what we were looking at. Now, when I say this, people say, "Oh, isn't this what ChatGPT does?" Remember, we were talking at a time when ChatGPT didn't exist, and our intention was also to create a social media app like WhatsApp, but entirely driven by conversational AI, where in group chats you can bring in AI assistants, ask them to shop, plan your itinerary. 2021, early 2022. Now, when I say this, isn't that what Meta AI does? So I'm not trying to. Probably we were disruptors even in our thought and vision at that point, and that's where it started. Now we've started as a B2C. Okay, this is the solution, the problem that we were addressing, and then looking at the solution, conversational AI was the right solution, right enabler for that problem. And then we registered and we launched our MVP, and in 2 weeks, 3 weeks after we launched the MVP, ChatGPT hit. And we also found that the expectation was very different once ChatGPT hit, and we had to pivot. When we were showing our B2C solution, the chatbots to businesses, we realized that they want that for their businesses, a human-like conversational assistant that would go beyond just answering typical questions, but also bring up recommendations, so on and so forth. And that's when we decided to pivot and go into the B2B segment. Even at that point, we didn't have a niche down. We didn't niche down the industry. So we were because we had the general foundational model, we could go into any industry where we wanted. So
Priya, just a moment here. I mean, you said that you simply, had to and were forced by market forces to pivot from B2C to B2B. So, and then you said you just began at the end of 2021. So it's been what, 2 years of existence? How many pivots have you had in just 2 years?
I've had more pivots than the number of times I changed my hairstyle. And I do that quite often. Initially, I was really embarrassed to admit that, am I failing as a CEO by making so many pivots? I don't have it in my bag, right? Am I a confused CEO? I was ashamed to confess that, I have had to pivot a number of times. But now I take it on my stride, because nobody has done the kind of AI things that we wanted to do or we are doing when we are at the thick of things. When we launched, we were swimming in the blue ocean. We had a truly disruptive concept, and then within just 2 to 3 months after we decided this is what we were going to do, we were swimming amongst the biggest of the possible sharks out there in the red ocean, right? So there is nothing that we could have done. We could have just stayed and said that, okay, this is what we are going to do, and then that's it, we would have finished. But one good thing that came out of that process was that we realized, as they say, during the gold rush, sell shovels and pickaxes, right? So during AI rush, what do? You sell LLMs, supercomputers, chips. And then we realized in the process of creating something very bespoke for the Gen Zers, for that demography in this region, we ended up training our own large language model, trained it on trillions of tokens, ended up with a final data set of 66 billion parameters. That's where the 66B comes from. Zlang 66B, Zwag's language model 66B. And then we realized that we have the shovels and pickaxes. So now let's leverage that. And also businesses wanted that. We looked around and saw that nobody else has a general foundational multi-model large language model that's trained on Arabic and English datasets. In leave alone in UAE, in GCC, there was none. So that was like the aha moment. So we now have to make use of that. And the logical conclusion was that the next step was to how do we leverage the large language model? And of course, we are a startup. We didn't have the luxury of the infrastructure that OpenAI or Google would have. So we had to be very choosy. So now we cannot be an open source model. We cannot put ourselves on Hugging Face and then people starting to build on our models, right? We had to remain a closed model. So that became a challenge, but then we leveraged that challenge. How do we use that in our favor? So we created bespoke solutions, right? Come to us with unique use cases. We look at it. If you want another wrapper on ChatGPT like kind of a product, we are not asked, please go to OpenAI. But if there are very unique use cases, that makes a difference, like in EVs, like in healthcare, in education, in publishing, and things like that. Bring to us unique use cases. And if it's worth spending 40 gallons or billions of gallons of water by training our, by using the compute power, then we'll take a decision and we'll go there. And at that point, it was also important, how do I make these decisions, right? It cannot be, okay, pick and choose. So it was very important for us to come up with our North Star. What will guide me as a CEO of an AI company to pick and choose who would I be working with, what kind of partners, what kind of use cases. So then it went on to creating the ESG framework and understanding, looking at ethics and responsible AI as one of our core values. So it all just happened. It was part of the process. You asked me, was there a method to the madness? Sort of. But
super. So I think we got the right message here also. Because Radhika talked about the vision, you talked about the North Star. And in talking about the journey which Zwag has taken over the past 2 years, what has come out is that the CXOs obviously have to be flexible in their approach. They have to be adaptable. They need to be resilient. But going forward, those challenges are going to multiply. Industries shift. I mean, we have seen most of the industries transform, shift, technologies change. But what you have described is pivoting significantly in such a short time. And as you rightly pointed out, at some point in time, you felt, are you incapable of being a CEO? You were like, as you rightly said, I mean, as you use your own words, ashamed of yourself, and am I the right person to lead this? And still you have gone through it, came out on top. And so I think the message for the aspiring CXOs is that this is going to be the ambiguity and the changing scenarios are going to be part and parcel of your life. And you will have to respond to it with great speed. You can't wait for somebody to show you the way, because there will be times when you got to create the way which others will follow. So fantastic. And I think you referred to healthcare also, and this is where I go to Roonam. Roonam, healthcare has got a different set of challenges. We have seen how COVID forced the entire healthcare industry to respond in a very short time, to come up with solutions, to come up with medications and vaccine and so on and so forth. While the entire manufacturing also had to support the production of whether it was masks or medical equipments and so many other things. Going forward, these challenges are always going to be there, along with extremely tight regulations. So any CXO, CEO in the space which is heavily regulated, but has the responsibility to respond extremely fast to a global phenomena, what are the qualities, or what does that CEO need to be prepared for? How do the leaders of today prepare for becoming a CXO in that kind of an environment? Over to you. Yes, you should be able to unmute now. Okay, hold on. something. Why does this happen? Yes. Can you
Thank
try
you.
now? Okay.
Yes, thank you. So as you were speaking, and of course, we've all seen a global phenomena, terrible one, very closely and very recently. So while the COVID catastrophe struck our country, I was still with Portia. And I would like to talk about Meena Ganesh, who was the CEO of Portia while I was working with them. And the qualities that she displayed in that crisis, I think, are really what we should all be looking to inculcate. So just a little bit of background, right? Portia is a home healthcare company. So when the country goes into lockdown, what happens to Portia is that suddenly, overnight, all of our business comes to a halt because we can no longer send clinicians to people's homes. And these are patients, some of them are extremely ill or extremely dependent on our care. So of course, while the physio services stop or the diagnostic services stop, and that's something we could still live with, there were nursing services, pediatric nurses, nursing attendants, who also for the first few days weren't allowed to get to the patient's home. Some of them managed to go, but then societies wouldn't allow them in. Sometimes patients wouldn't allow them in. And the 4 or 5 days that it took to start getting medical person passes for the staff and to resume some of the critical services, we worried for both things, right? We worried for our patients, but we also worried for the survival of our business, because overnight your entire operation has become close to zero. And at this point in time, what does Meena Ganesh do? She mobilizes her top management team and repurposes their talents to various different tasks, right? So our head of finance, for instance, is working with local governments to ensure that we are among the needed staff, and we obtain passes for all of our workers. While he's working on that, she mobilized myself and our head of tech to start talking to state governments to think about what we as a home healthcare company can do to contribute to the country's crisis. Now, what was happening meanwhile globally in countries like Italy is that the global systems, healthcare systems, were failing. And people were realizing that the best way to deal with this is to identify non-critical patients, treat them at home. So the Indian government is still, picking up everyone who was tested positive and taking them into government centers. Obviously, it's all happening, with a major time crunch and not the best of facilities, etc. But we are looking at the global stage, learning from them. And fortunately for us, the Delhi state government, decided to take the plunge. And Portia, along with the Delhi state government, launches India's first home isolation program. So what happens is the ICMR sends the positive results to the Portia call center. We are using our technology. Overnight, we've created dashboards, we've created health forms, etc. We're talking to the patients, we're giving them the bad news that they've tested positive. We're educating them about how to test, how to isolate at home, but we're also taking down parameters. What's your temperature? What's your SpO2? And identifying who needs to be hospitalized versus who needs to be at home. It took us 2 days to kind of smoothen out the process. By the end of it, we had worked with 7 state governments. More than that, every single hospital in this country worth its salt had replicated our home isolation program.
Wow. The
CEO was thinking on her feet. She was working with governance. She was repurposing her, staff. She was leveraging all of her resources, which was tech ability, call center ability, the fact that we have feet on the ground. And from Bangalore, she has managed to get us 7 state governments, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Delhi, working with us, Punjab. We didn't have all the language that we needed. We worked with other call centers, which were, suddenly rendered useless, to pull in their staff, train them on our systems. It was insane. We worked 18 hours a day. And the reason we did it was because our CEO was leading from the front. So to answer your question, what does a CEO in time of crisis need to look like? I've had the front seat view.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think rightly said that one is leading from the front, but also being so responsive. I mean, the timelines which you gave of 1 day, 2 day, coordinating with the government across states, it's unthinkable. I mean, this is stuff on which movies get made, the Bollywood kind. So, lovely. I think what you just described is pretty much a case study in itself on crisis management from a CEO point of view. Thank you, Runam, for that. And while we have seen these two diverse opinions from the healthcare industry and the AI industry, I now take the stage to Radhika. For you, my question will be, I mean, we've seen the challenges. We have seen the challenges for the upcoming CXOs. Now, the CXOs in development, the people who are aspiring CXOs, the current CXOs have this responsibility of getting these people ready for the role, right? While we have the coaches, like you're coaching people to become, to create their C-suite journey. But within the organizations, the CEOs are developing the leaders under them. How is that going to, what changes do we need to bring there? Because how proactive it is, and these challenges, like Runam said, she had a front seat view of the leaders in action, and that inspired her. She learned a lot from it so that she now can utilize it in her role also. What would be your perspective on what further needs to be done in creating those future CXOs? Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Hemant. So just to, it was a very inspiring story shared by Runam. And COVID did bring out the best and worst in many of us. And lots and lots of case studies can be created out of the COVID crisis. And most importantly, the most important question you asked is, how do you actually create the second line in force so that there is perpetuity, there is continuity, and there is the next team which kind of takes charge from the existing one. As a CXO, as a CXO, one of the most important thing is, it's a very interesting line I read. Whoever thinks they are indispensable, they should first go and visit a graveyard. Everyone there who is lying there has now proven to be dispensable. So when we work with that attitude of, so there are three things to a CXO. One is attitude. Of course, knowledge, skills, deliverables is all something which is a given. It's something which has to be there. Without that, you can't be in the corporate race, ladder, or even as an entrepreneur. So that's part of the game. The most important thing is, even if you lack a bit on that, if the attitude is right, you can have the right people around you to make things happen for you. One of the most important thing is, it's very, very important to groom the second line as a CXO. That's from my level. The second thing is, as an aspiring CXO, it's not just to have a dream. You have to go out. There are factors which make you a CXO. One part is, of course, your deliverables, your skills, everything that you come with. But it's important to ask yourself, is that sufficient enough for me to take the next role? To be a leader, what does it take? How do you create a larger than life impact? How many people really know of you, about your work? How much ever AI can come, human beings cannot be replaced, because it's a tool. It's a tool to be used. It's like you have a knife, you have a computer. I still remember back in the days, I had attended one when liberalization was discussed back in 1990s, late 90s. So we had one professor, or not professor, one speaker who had come to our college, and she was talking how liberalization is going to be bad for the country and it will not give anybody the job. And we were the young blood and boiling, saying, how could she speak something like that? It's completely rubbish. We are very much for it. Of course, there was a mass exit from that room. And of course, it's been proven that it's working very well. Why am I sharing this is new changes will come. But it's important to use the tools. How do you use the tools? And as a CXO, the important part is also how do you manage people? They are your first resource. Everything else is behind them. Human beings are the ones creating the economy. Human beings are the ones creating the intelligences. And if we are able to decode and understand that part, then a large part of your stress can be taken off, which we keep calling stress. So I'm not an HR person. I've been a banker all my life. For me, results matter. For me, creating matters. So if you ask me, oh, why am I talking like this? This has been my experience. We focus so, whether it is a customer, whether it is my supplier, everyone is a human being. And after all the logical answerings that we keep giving, finally, when a decision has to be taken, we say that you take a decision based on your gut. For me, that was the most interesting part. What is this gut? It doesn't come from my stomach. So it is not, everything is not logical. Decisions are made based on something beyond that. And that was the most curious thing for me to decode. The abstract thing that you shared about at the beginning, right? So the abstract is not about, it's not the earth is changing. It's not the world is changing. It's not the sun or the moon is changing. It's the thoughts which people, which is not known. The unknown is what is called the abstract. And hence, how do I bring out that from within me? And if anyone who is aspiring to be a CXO starts working on themselves, self-awareness becomes the first step in the process of creating anything big. One can, and when you know who you are, what you want to be, your passion, your core values, your mission, your purpose keeps you awake all night. Coming back to the first question that you asked.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you. I think I will remember that after all these skills, attitudes, and everything, finally the CEO needs to follow the gut feeling. Because it's an extremely powerful resource the CEO has at his or her own perusal.
So
yes.
That's what I just wanted to just add a small bit. We have to work to improve and strengthen that gut feel.
Yes.
It comes from within, and there is techniques to make it strong. We often keep that aside and say that it's always in the dark side of you because it's not, you don't think it's logical, but decisions sometimes have to be taken which are not necessarily logical. Simple thing, marriage, it's not logical. The most important decision of your life, you don't make it logical. And you end up spending 20 years, 30 years, 5 years also, it's okay. Whatever is, that's your time span. You end up spending in a relationship which is not logical. So decisions do take place in that space. And for me as a CXO, which is why CXO Incubator was born, it's to incubate that unknown side of yours and to make it powerful.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think the conversation took a very interesting turn, went into love stories. But yes, a very relevant, I would say. I mean, the moment you mentioned that, it made so much sense. The biggest decision of our lives, we don't take based on a logical arrival of facts. It's by gut feeling or heart feeling, as we might want to call it. Well, thank you very much, Roonam, Radhika, Priya. It was a fantastic discussion. I mean, we went in many different directions, But at the end, it comes to a common fact that the role of the CXO is complex, is challenging, and it requires an individual to be absolutely hyper alert to what is happening around, hyper aware of what is happening in the world, in the regulatory things, how the market is responding, how regulatory changes are happening, how they will need to respond at absolutely super fast speed to even survive at times. So that is the challenge for the CXO of the future. And this is on top of the existing challenges. You talk to any CXO of today, of yesterday, and they will tell you what does it take to become a CXO. On top of that, you add an extra dose of VUCA and these complexity which we have discussed today. And that's for you, is the CXO of the future. So Priya, Radhika, Runam, I will come back to you for your Arnold Schwarzenegger-like final single statement, one-liner that you would like to say. And I would like to open the floor now to all our attendees. Good time to ask your questions. I'm just going to allow participants to unmute themselves. Who's going to ask the first question? Fastest finger first. Chaitanya had a comment which I saw. Chaitanya, if you have a question or if you would like to verbalize your comment for everybody.
So, see, there's no question as such, but I too work on AI. I too work on applications of AI on agriculture. So, one of the greatest things or one of my latest and greatest is that I'm growing paddy with salt water. So, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is testing it right now. Now, the entire farm ecosystem goes for a toss with this innovation. So how water is controlled, how pesticides are controlled, how fertilizer is controlled, there is no law, right? So on one side we have regulation, on the other side we don't. So
absolutely. And I think that was an important point, that where progress in a particular industry is going faster than regulation can catch up, while it is an opportunity, it can be threat for the individual industrial players, because when regulation does catch up, you will have to fall in line, which means you might have to take a step back. And the best way to avoid that would be to become a participant with the regulatory bodies in formulation of the regulations. Because there are times in some of the countries where when the regulations are created, the industry is not part of it. And the people making those regulations are not really competent, let me use that word, to actually decide on things. So the right inputs in the form of industry participation can go a long way in bringing the right regulations in. So thank you. Anand, your hand is up. You can unmute and yes.
Yeah. So my question was for Priya. I wanted to know any specific bespoke solution that they have worked out or is in the working for any customer.
Yeah. So we are working for 3 clients now in different stages of the product development. The first one, what we have done is to help authors. Authors are great at writing, but when it comes to pitching their book and to come up with the right genre when they go out to the agents, and the entire agent matching, writing the right query letter to get yourself to be picked by the agent, and also by agents AI or the tools that the agent uses. So that was a real use case that came to us. And being an author myself, and I've been through these issues and cycles as well. So that it felt personal, and it was a lady from Canada. So I had to take that use case. It was worth using our compute power, and we are working with her to create an AI solution for her. Another is a healthcare tech where it's matching patients with the right doctors around the world, especially in places like the UK and the US, where there's a long waiting time, where you have to wait a long time to get a second opinion, even a first opinion or diagnosis, right? So how do we match that perfectly? The kind of a matchmaking in the healthcare space.
Very interesting.
mastery, matching, you have a certain insurance, which clinic has the right doctor, and that search can be endless for people, right? So bringing the conversational element, bringing the matchmaking algorithm enabled by AI. So that's another what we are working for. Another one very interesting use case is for the EV charging stations. So whatever EV vehicle that you have, if you are planning a route, you need to get the locations of the charging stations. And if along your route, if you don't have a public charging station, is there somebody who has a personal, who has an electric vehicle at home? Are they willing to kind of onboard their charging station, kind of a Airbnb for your personal home chargers? How do vehicle owners onboard themselves, and how do they open their chargers to them, and also how to plan the route along charger locations? All this being played and found out through AI. So these are the 3 use cases that we are working on right now. But we are trying to niche down more into the education sector. And great that Chaitanya mentioned, we're really exploring the agricultural, agri-tech part of AI as well, as to how it's a very challenging space, because every now and then there's another weed that comes in, another bug that comes in, because of the kind of climate problems that you're facing. 0 to IPO roadmap at this point, and it might change. By betting is in my blood. It might change, but this is what we are kind of looking at this point. Yeah.
Super. Well,
Got that.
Thank you, Anand, for the question. Any questions? We have space only for one more. We are already 5 minutes over our scheduled time. If not, okay, no questions. So I'll get back to my panelists for their Arnold-like mic drop statement. So the CXO of the future, what are your perspectives? We'll go from Priya to Radhika to Runam. So we'll start with Priya this time.
CXO of the future, especially in a startup like mine, I want the CXO, the next in line, to be really young. So that is the second line that I'm grooming. And I want them to be empathetic, sensitive, not desensitized, because they have lived in an environment that's which kind of contributes to them being desensitized to issues around them and things like that. So I want them to grow empathy. I want them to grow more of the soft skills, and also be able to find the right balance between artificial intelligence, AI, and human intelligence, HI.
Fantastic. So Priya wants a sensitive, new age, tech-oriented CEO who can balance AI and HI. Well, over to you, Radhika, your one-liner for the CXOs of the future.
So the one line would be find your purpose and find your path and make a huge contribution to make this world more and empathetic, and humans respect human beings and take them forward.
Fantastic, fantastic. So the world can go AI, but go back to your roots, discover yourself, and contribute to the world. Fantastic, fantastic. Runam, over to you.
I'll take a slightly different tack, and I'll say, I think what we need in the future CEOs is extreme clarity of thought, because times will be confusing, and decisiveness. I think especially from what Priya said about her pivots, it's very, very important that you have the clarity and the ability to make hard decisions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Runam. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Radhika, for being on the panel today. Thank you to the audience for being here and contributing to the conversation, asking your questions. And yes, a fantastic conversation. And I love the note on which it has ended. What we need is absolute crystal clear clarity of thought, because we are going to be in very confusing times. Love the thought. It's going to be an adventure. It's going to be a joyride. It's going to be very confusing times. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here. And with that, I formally close the session. Thank you very much. I'm going